You simply won't believe what just transpired in Cleveland. The audacity displayed is absolutely unreal. Kevin Stefanski just witnessed an event that hasn't occurred within the Browns organization since 1994. Having watched a fifth-round rookie quarterback make franchise history by becoming the first rookie signal caller to win his debut start in 30 years. He saw this kid snap a humiliating 17-game losing streak that had become a national punchline. Yet when reporters asked the simple question of whether Shedeur Sanders would start the next game, Stefanski looked into those cameras and delivered the most spineless, cowardly, politically calculated words imaginable. He said, and I quote, "I'm not going to get into that. Not a yes, not a confident endorsement, not even a lukewarm commitment, just corporate coach speak designed to say absolutely nothing while creating maximum chaos and uncertainty." The disrespect is so profound that Browns fans are currently losing their collective minds across social media, demanding answers, questioning everything, and wondering if their franchise is cursed to repeat the same quarterback disasters that have haunted them for decades. Let that statement marinate for a second because the implications are staggering. Shedeur Sanders just achieved something that Baker Mayfield didn't do, that Johnny Manziel couldn't do, and that countless first and second round picks failed to accomplish. He walked into one of the most hostile quarterback situations in professional football, took the reins of an offense that had been sputtering and failing all season long, and he won. He didn't just win, he showed flashes of genuine star potential. He made throws that had his teammates' jaws dropping. He scrambled and extended plays when protection broke down. He demonstrated poise and leadership that veteran players immediately recognized and respected. Myles Garrett, the face of the franchise, went out of his way to publicly endorse Shedeur, saying the team needs to rally around him. The locker room embraced him. The fans finally had something to cheer about. The national media actually paid attention to Cleveland for positive reason. And Kevin Stefanski's response to all of that, to this historic moment, to this potential franchise-altering development, was essentially a shrug and a "we'll see." The full quote from Stefanski is even worse when you examine it closely because it reveals everything wrong with his approach to the quarterback position. He said, "I'm not going to get into that. Obviously proud of him and proud of this offense, and there are a ton of things to learn from. But I'm just going to worry about today." Decode that corporate speak, and here is what it actually means. Stefanski is scared to commit because committing means admitting his previous depth chart decisions were wrong. It means acknowledging that Dillon Gabriel, the guy he's been starting most of the season, isn't the answer. It means taking responsibility for waiting too long to give Shedeur a real opportunity. So instead of showing conviction, instead of demonstrating leadership, instead of making the obvious call that everyone watching can see, he hides behind vague platitudes about being proud and learning and focusing on today. It's the kind of answer that makes fans want to throw their televisions out the window because it represents everything frustrating about coaching in the modern NFL, where everyone is terrified of making a definitive statement that might look bad if things don't work out perfectly. The context surrounding this situation makes Stefanski's indecision even more infuriating and inexcusable. Cleveland sits at 3 wins and 8 losses. Their playoff hopes evaporated weeks ago. They're playing out the string in what has been a massively disappointing season where almost nothing has gone right. In that scenario, with nothing to lose and everything to gain, what possible justification exists for not committing to the young quarterback who just made history? What argument can anyone make for hedging and equivocating when the entire purpose of the remaining games should be evaluating young talent and building toward next season? This isn't a playoff contender trying to make a delicate decision about which veteran gives them the best chance to win now. This is a lottery team that should be desperate to find out what they have in a rookie quarterback who showed more promise in 60 minutes than their other options have shown all year combined. Let's examine exactly why Stefanski's non-committal response isn't just disappointing, but actively damaging to multiple stakeholders within the organization. First and foremost, it creates unnecessary uncertainty and instability in the locker room. Professional football players want clarity. They want to know who their quarterback is so they can build chemistry, develop timing, and create trust through repetition and shared experiences. When receivers run routes, they need to understand their quarterback's tendencies, his arm strength, and his decision-making patterns. When offensive linemen protect, they need to know how their quarterback moves in the pocket, how long he typically holds the ball, and what his scrambling tendencies are. When running backs check protections, They need to be in sync with their quarterback's reads and adjustments. All of that requires consistency and commitment from the coaching staff. When the head coach refuses to definitively say who the starting quarterback will be, it sends a message that nobody's job is truly safe, that one good performance doesn't actually matter, and that organizational politics and coaching staff ego take precedence over results and merit. Second, and perhaps most critically, Stefanski's hedging undermines Shedeur's confidence and stunts his development at a crucial moment. Put yourself in the rookie's shoes for a moment. You've worked your entire life for this opportunity. You've dealt with doubters who said you were only successful because of your famous father. You've heard critics claim you're arrogant, entitled, and not tough enough for the NFL. You've experienced the humiliation of falling to the 5th round despite believing you're a first-round talent. You finally get your shot in the most pressure-packed situation imaginable, with your team on a historic losing streak, with the fan base desperate for hope, with national media scrutinizing your every move, and you deliver. You win the game. You make plays. You earn respect from teammates and opponents. Then your head coach gets asked if you'll start next week, and he basically says, maybe we'll see. I'm not committing to anything. How does that make you feel? It's a psychological gut punch. It tells you that your coach doesn't fully believe in you, that you're on the shortest of short leashes, and that you'll have to prove yourself all over again every single week, rather than receiving the support and stability necessary for a young quarterback to develop confidence and consistency. Third, Stefanski's indecision damages his own credibility with multiple constituencies that matter for his job security and effectiveness. Browns fans who have suffered through more quarterback disasters than any other fan base in modern NFL history can see with their own eyes that Shedeur Sanders looks different from the parade of failed signal callers they've endured. They watched him make throws that excited them in ways they haven't felt in years. They saw leadership qualities that reminded them of the great quarterbacks they've watched on other teams and wish Cleveland could find. When their coach responds to that historic debut performance with wishy-washy, non-committal coach speak, it makes fans question whether Stefanski has the vision and conviction necessary to finally solve the quarterback problem that has plagued the franchise for decades. National media members who generally evaluate coaches based on their ability to make smart personnel decisions and manage game situations see Stefanski equivocating on what appears to be an obvious call and question his decision-making capabilities. And potentially, most importantly, ownership in the front office, represented primarily by General Manager Andrew Berry, have to wonder whether their head coach is the right person to develop the quarterback that Berry burned political capital to draft and believes can be a franchise cornerstone. The broader context of Cleveland's season makes every single argument for not committing to Shedeur Sanders immediately look even weaker and more indefensible. This is not a 7-4 team fighting for a playoff spot where you might want to stick with the veteran who got you there. This is not a situation where Dillon Gabriel has been playing at a Pro Bowl level and earned the right to keep his job through sustained excellence. This is a 3-8 team with zero playoff hopes, minimal pride remaining, and every incentive to evaluate young talent and build toward the future. Gabriel has started most of the season and shown absolutely nothing that suggests he's part of Cleveland's long-term plans at the position. His statistics are replacement level at best. His performances have been thoroughly mediocre. He hasn't elevated the offense or created explosive plays or demonstrated any characteristic that makes you think he could be a franchise quarterback. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders plays one game, wins, makes spectacular throws, earns public endorsements from team leaders, generates genuine excitement, and his reward is his coach refusing to commit to starting him again. The logic is non-existent. The justification is invisible. The explanation makes no sense to anyone watching objectively. The statistical comparison between Shedeur's debut and Gabriel's season-long performance reveals a stark talent gap that should make Stefanski's decision automatic. Dillon Gabriel has appeared in 8 games with 6 starts this season, throwing for 937 yards with 7 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, while completing 59.2% of his passes. Those are painfully average numbers that scream backup quarterback or stopgap starter at best. He's not turning the ball over at catastrophic rates, which is fine, but he's also not creating the explosive plays and scoring opportunities that winning NFL offenses require. His completion percentage is barely acceptable. His yards per game average is below league standard. His touchdown production is mediocre. He's essentially a replacement-level player doing replacement-level things, which would be tolerable if Cleveland was winning games, but they're not. So what's the point of continuing to run him out there when you have an alternative who has shown superior upside? Compare Gabriel's entire season to what Shedeur Sanders accomplished in his debut start, and the contrast becomes even more obvious. Shedeur completed 11 of 20 passes for 109 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. The completion percentage of 55% looks slightly worse than Gabriel's season average, but context matters enormously. Shedeur was attempting deeper throws downfield, taking calculated shots at explosive plays rather than settling for safe checkdowns and horizontal passes that inflate completion percentages without moving the offense effectively. He threw for more yards in one game than Gabriel has averaged per start. He made several throws that demonstrated arm talent Gabriel simply doesn't possess, including a spectacular 52-yard completion to Isaiah Bond that requires Shedeur to extend the play when protection broke down, keep his eyes downfield under pressure, and then deliver a laser with accuracy and touch. That's not a throw most NFL quarterbacks can make consistently. That's special talent revealing itself in a high-pressure situation. Most importantly, Shedeur won the game and ended a historic losing streak, which is ultimately the only statistic that truly matters in professional football. The media characterization of Shedeur's debut as not exactly outstanding represents either incompetent analysis or deliberate framing designed to downplay what actually occurred. Was it a perfect performance? Of course not. No rookie quarterback plays perfectly in their first NFL start, especially with minimal first-team practice repetitions and preparation time. Did he make mistakes? Yes, he threw an interception, which happens to every quarterback at every level of football, but the totality of his performance, evaluated honestly and in context, was absolutely successful and impressive. He moved the offense more effectively than Cleveland has moved it most of the season. He made multiple spectacular throws that showcased NFL-caliber arm talent. He demonstrated poise in the pocket and composure under pressure that many rookies lack. He scrambled and extended plays when protection broke down rather than taking sacks or forcing terrible decisions. He led his team to victory in a situation loaded with pressure and expectations. He earned public praise from veteran teammates who don't give compliments lightly. That's not an outstanding debut, and if you're grading on a curve designed to make it impossible for any rookie to succeed, that's a legitimately promising first start that should generate excitement about future possibilities. The recurring criticism about Shedeur's attitude and personality being off-putting to some people is coded language that has followed him throughout his college career and pre-draft process. What critics describe as arrogance, cockiness, or entitlement, supporters recognize as confidence, self-belief, and the swagger necessary to play quarterback at the highest level. The reality is that Shedeur carries himself with a certainty and bravado that comes naturally when you're the son of Deion Sanders, one of the most confident and charismatic athletes in sports history. And when you've succeeded at every level you've competed, that confidence can absolutely be polarizing. Some people find it refreshing and inspiring. Others find it grating or presumptuous. But here's the thing that should matter most to NFL evaluators. You absolutely want your quarterback to believe he's the best player on the field. You want him to think he can make any throw in any situation. You want him to have unshakable confidence even when things go wrong. The worst thing you can have at quarterback is someone who's timid, uncertain, or lacking in self-belief. Shedeur's confidence might rub some people the wrong way, but it's actually one of his greatest assets as a quarterback if it translates into competitive fearlessness on the field. The draft process that saw Shedeur fall all the way to pick 44 in the 5th round is a fascinating case study in how NFL teams evaluate quarterbacks and how groupthink and risk aversion dominate draft rooms. Before the draft, numerous analysts and scouts projected Shedeur as a potential first-round pick based on his college production, his leadership qualities, his football intelligence, and his NFL-ready skill set. He put up enormous numbers at Colorado's. He demonstrated accuracy and decision-making that translated well to NFL concepts. He showed arm talent sufficient to make all the throws required at the professional level. But somewhere in the evaluation process, teams talked themselves out of him. Maybe they worried about his attitude. Maybe they questioned whether his success was scheme-dependent or propped up by surrounding talent. Maybe they didn't want to deal with Deion Sanders' involvement and influence. Maybe they just made bad evaluations. Whatever the reasons, 31 teams passed on him multiple times, allowing Cleveland to grab him in the 5th round with minimal investment. And now, after one start, it's already looking like one of the biggest draft steals in recent memory, making every team that passed on him question their process and evaluation. The specific play that best encapsulates why Shedeur Sanders represents a different level of talent than what Cleveland has had at quarterback is that 52-yard completion to Isaiah Bond. Break down exactly what happened on that play, because it reveals everything. The pocket collapses, protection breaks down. Most quarterbacks in that situation either take a sack, throw the ball away, or panic and make a terrible decision under duress. Shedeur extends the play by moving in the pocket and buying time. But critically, he keeps his eyes downfield the entire time, never giving up on the progression, never settling for running to save yards. He identifies Bond working downfield and delivers an absolute missile over 50 yards in the air with defensive pressure bearing down on him. The ball arrives with perfect placement, allowing Bond to catch it in stride without breaking pace. That's not a check down. That's not a scheme-generated easy completion. That's elite arm talent, combined with composure and vision, creating an explosive play that completely changes field position and momentum. Most quarterbacks in the NFL cannot consistently make that throw. The fact that Shedeur did it in his debut start with 1 week of preparation demonstrates that he possesses tools and abilities that Gabriel doesn't have and that Cleveland desperately needs if they want to build a functional offense. The argument that Cleveland should continue starting Shedeur Sanders, at least for the time being, actually understates the case, because it frames the decision as a temporary experiment when it should be viewed as a permanent commitment to developing what could be a franchise quarterback. This isn't about giving him a couple of games to see what happens and then potentially going back to Gabriel if things don't go perfectly. This should be about declaring Shedeur the unquestioned starter for the remainder of this season and potentially beyond, giving him the consistent opportunities and full support necessary for a young quarterback to develop and grow. The Browns have nothing to play for in terms of wins and losses at this point. Their season is over. Every remaining game should be viewed primarily as a developmental opportunity to evaluate young players and build toward next year. In that context, what possible argument exists for not making Shedeur the permanent starter immediately? He's shown more promise than Gabriel. He brings energy and excitement that changes team dynamics. He represents the future while Gabriel represents a known commodity who clearly isn't the answer. The decision should have been made immediately after the game, announced confidently, and supported completely moving forward. Kevin Stefanski's job security should absolutely be scrutinized and questioned based on his handling of the quarterback situation this season, and particularly his response to Shedeur's debut performance. A competent head coach would have recognized Shedeur's talent earlier in the season, gotten him more practice repetitions with the first team, and found ways to get him game experience sooner. A confident coach with conviction would have immediately committed to Shedeur as the starter after watching him make history rather than hedging and equivocating when asked a straightforward question. A smart coach who understands organizational realities would recognize that his own job prospects are directly tied to finding a franchise quarterback and that Shedeur represents the best opportunity he's had to do that since arriving in Cleveland. Instead, Stefanski is acting like someone more concerned with protecting his ego and avoiding admitting mistakes than with making the correct decisions for the organization. That kind of coaching invariably leads to failure and ultimately costs people their jobs when results don't materialize. The organizational dysfunction that Stefanski's non-committal stance represents fits perfectly into the larger pattern of failure that has defined Cleveland's franchise for decades when it comes to the quarterback position. The Browns have consistently failed to commit to young quarterbacks and give them the developmental runway necessary to succeed. They've cycled through more signal callers than any other franchise in modern NFL history, specifically because they keep looking for reasons to move on rather than finding reasons to believe and commit. They panic at the first sign of struggle. They prioritize short-term thinking over long-term development. They allow outside noise and criticism to influence decisions that should be made based solely on evaluation and projection. And now, when they finally have a young quarterback who shows genuine promise and makes history in his debut, their head coach can't even definitively say he'll start the next game. It's the same dysfunction wearing a slightly different mask, and Browns fans have every right to be furious about watching their team potentially waste another promising young quarterback because of organizational cowardice and indecision. The fan reaction to Stefanski's comments has been overwhelmingly negative and angry, with Browns supporters flooding every social media platform, expressing frustration, disbelief, and rage at what they perceive as their coaching staff once again snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Twitter and Reddit are filled with Browns fans demanding Stefanski commit to Shedeur immediately, questioning the coach's competence and decision-making, and expressing fear that the organization is about to repeat the same mistakes that have plagued them for decades. Local Cleveland sports radio has been inundated with calls from fans who cannot comprehend why their head coach won't make what seems like an obvious decision. The frustration is completely understandable and justified because Browns fans have endured more quarterback disasters and disappointments than any other fan base in professional football. And they're terrified of watching their team waste another opportunity because of coaching incompetence or organizational dysfunction. The media coverage of Stefanski's non-committal stance has been almost universally critical, with analysts and commentators across national and local platforms questioning his decision-making and suggesting he's making a significant mistake. ESPN talking heads are debating whether this represents typical coaching caution or something more concerning about Stefanski's vision and conviction. NFL Network analysts are highlighting the absurdity of refusing to commit to a quarterback who just made franchise history and showed obvious promise. Local Cleveland media members are amplifying fan frustration and pressing for clear answers about the decision-making process. The consensus among people who cover football professionally seems to be that Stefanski is overthinking a situation that should be simple and obvious, and that his indecision could ultimately cost him credibility and potentially his job if this situation is mishandled. The comparison to other coaching situations around the NFL where young quarterbacks have been given opportunities and full organizational support is highly instructive because it reveals what successful quarterback development actually looks like. The best coaches in football understand that finding and developing a franchise quarterback requires unwavering commitment, consistent support through inevitable struggles, and the patience to let young players work through mistakes and learn from failures. They don't yank their rookies in and out of the lineup based on one bad game or one rough performance. They don't create quarterback controversies where none need to exist. They identify their guy, commit to him publicly and privately, and then provide the stability and consistency necessary for development and growth. That's how you build sustainable success at the most important position in team sports. Stefanski's equivocation and refusal to commit does the opposite, creating uncertainty and instability that makes it harder for Shedeur to develop and succeed.